Hey y'all, what's good, everybody? Welcome to another impromptu episode of the Political Chop Shop. I got my man Sam Parker here. Y'all know y'all listen to the Conservative Enclave podcast. You've heard him on there before. He's my fellow Convention of States brother, fellow constitutionalist, and we're here today. We're going to actually break down what's happening in Portland because there is so many complexities that's going on in Portland right now that people are either forgetting is happening in Portland at this time or don't understand what's happening in Portland. And that's why we're doing this right now, to try to clear the air of all the misinformation that's going around. So real quick, Sam, you'll go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody real quick and we'll get into it.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Sam Parker. I live in Utah. I'm former state director for the Convention of States. I've worked in banking, I worked in biotech, I've worked in baseball. I call it the 3 Bs. Now I'm selling medical equipment or medical personal protective equipment. So, and having a good time online with my buddy Rod here.
Hey, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So the first question I'm going to throw out there for us is, and this is the overall question, we'll break down the nuance of this, is what President Trump did in Portland, is it constitutional?
Well, I think first we want to be specific about what we're talking about. What exactly did President Trump do in Portland? And as I understand it, this is what he did. He dispatched federal law enforcement to protect federal property, federal monuments and federal buildings. Are those facts in dispute? I know that people love to dispute everything, but I mean, those are the facts as I understand them. I'm not saying that you want to dispute those, but we know that there are people that will dispute anything. So, I mean, those are the facts as I understand them.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And you know, it is within his purview, obviously, to do so. I mean, it's part of the enumerated powers that's given to the federal government in the Constitution to protect property owned by the federal government, et cetera. And there's more nuance to that also we won't get into here. So now the talk now is about how these stormtroopers descended out of the sky onto the streets of Portland, right?
And they're Imperial walkers. They came in Imperial walkers, right?
Yeah, right. Like Robotech or something, right?
and then they blew up the shield generator of Portland, right?
Right. So they come in here and they actually detain people, and everybody's screaming that
and what people are they detaining, right?
Right, exactly. And
the people that are vandalizing or attempting to vandalize federal property.
Exactly correct. Now, I have framed this as being. I look at the Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, where it talks, basically talks about the federal government protecting against foreign and domestic terrorism. And I cite that every time. And a lot of people will say, well, no, that's not really true because the state didn't invite them in, which in that particular section, the Constitution just says, unless invited by the legislature, or if the legislature cannot be convened, the executive can ask for help straight away. Right. Yes. But in this case, federalism has been breached. Okay, because Oregon law, section 133.245, basically gives federal officers the authority to uphold state law. And the last time I checked, arson or rioting is against state law. Am I wrong here?
Well, I got to say, first of all, I'm not an expert in legal minutia. Here's what I do know, especially Oregon minutia. Unless you're talking about the laws around being able to pump your own gas in Oregon, then I'm quite an expert. I am from Washington, and I'm quite an expert as to the gas laws in Oregon.
Right.
However, that being said, the first principle here that I think we need to discuss is that statute cannot supersede the Constitution, right?
Right.
The Constitution is supreme. So, number one, we have to understand that the federal government can't deploy to states in times, what does it say, insurrection or domestic insurrection and whatnot, unless they're specifically invited, like you said, by the legislature or the executive. However, they are not there to perform a defense or an action against general insurrection. They're there to protect federal property. And I do not believe that section, Article 4, Section 4, applies to the defense or the protection of federal property, which is why I believe President Trump has acted so narrowly here. He's not there authorizing these troops or sending troops in to protect local property, the local courthouses or police precincts or statues, like the Elk statue that got burned down. They're only there protecting federal property, and they're not acting offensively either. We've seen the videos of them just standing there peacefully, letting protesters and rioters film them. So I believe that he's on firm constitutional ground here. Now, that's point number one. Point number two, your question about Oregon statute that authorizes, and now what is the statute exactly?
It basically authorizes federal law enforcement to uphold state law.
That's very interesting because just as a side note, we remember when Arizona tried to protect its border and tried to enforce federal law against immigration. The Obama Justice Department sued and intervened and said only the federal government can uphold federal law. And so Arizona had to cease and desist from using its local law enforcement to enforce federal law. So this is the reverse, right?
Right. Exactly.
Authorizing the federal government to enforce state law. Now, I'm not aware of anything in the Constitution and the U.S. Constitution that prevents that. However, I'm not sure that's an enumerated power in the U.S. Constitution either.
No, it's not, and that's kind of where we go ahead.
It's kind of dicey because Article 4, Section 4 does say, if authorized by the legislature, the federal government can do some things. So does a state law? Does Oregon state law, does that count as authorization? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I look at it this way, right? And this is the way I've kind of broken it down, right? I mean, we know the three powers of federalism: the enumerated powers, the concurrent powers, and the reserve powers. And the reserve powers is given to the states, which police power falls under the reserved powers, right? There, the public safety piece is where the states, have full domain. As now, if we go into the law and order aspect, that's a concurrent power, which is shared by both the federal and the state governments. So with that being said, I look at it as if they wrote that statute, they basically gave away their 10th Amendment right to police power and made it a concurrent power with the federal government. So now
it seems that way.
They've given them the green light to say, hey, well, you can enforce federal law. Well, Trump sat back and just watched all this happen. And he's like, okay, wait, this is getting too much. So that's why, like you said, that very narrow stance he took by protecting federal property, because, I mean, in theory, they're not only committing a state crime at this point, they're committing a federal crime at this point.
That's right.
So for people to not look at the nuance of just that situation alone.
I mean, it's hardly nuanced, Steve. It's also hardly nuanced. You have federal troops or federal law enforcement protecting federal property. There's not a lot of nuance there. That's pretty straight up.
Right. But see, the thing is that the people that are throwing this stormtrooper rhetoric around,
Oh,
etc., don't understand it at that level because
they're wearing camo uniforms.
With police on it, and they had big DHS patches right on their thing. Like, how can you not identify that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the other piece of this is the Fourth Amendment issue. Right.
Okay.
And people confuse the Fourth Amendment with an arrest, when the Fourth Amendment only mentions illegal searches and seizures. It doesn't mention detention.
Right.
You can be detained without warrant.
Without warrant, yep.
Right, due to investigation. And that's exactly what these guys did. They took that person and took him out to the car and drove off. And apparently later the stories come out that they detained him while they did their investigation and let him go. You don't need a warrant for that.
No. You don't.
And
they let them go. And let's not forget that they're not disappearing these people like permanently, like has happened in other countries, like with secret police, where people just get disappeared, right? Or get dropped from helicopters, right? They get basically arrested or detained, as you will, as you say, and no warrant needed, and then they get released. And I have to presume that some of these people that they've detained or arrested have not been released. Like they've actually broken laws, perhaps, and so they're not released.
Right.
But I imagine, and I haven't seen any the sources on this, but I imagine that they're being granted access to their lawyers and being given due process. But at the end of the day, if you're attempting to deface or damage or commit crimes against federal property, then I mean, this is law and order. This is what law and order looks like, right?
Exactly.
And oh my gosh, they're wearing camo uniforms to do this. I mean, the rioters are wearing all black helmet, motorcycle helmets, goggles. They have clubs and backpacks with weaponry and shields and stuff. I mean, basically the protesters and rioters are coming out in riot gear. But oh my gosh, these federal troops are wearing camouflage and are easily identifiable.
I just, it's just like, citizens have the right to remain silent, right? The federal law enforcement, there's no statute that says they have to identify themselves. There is not a single federal statute that says they have to identify themselves. Now, state law says law enforcement has to identify themselves when they make an arrest or detain someone, right? But there's nothing in federal law, and federal law enforcement, last time I checked, is not subject to state law.
That's right.
So there goes that whole debacle out the window. Now, if we were to take everything, if we take out the bastardization of the Constitution, right? And I want to flip the other side of it.
Okay.
Right? Donald Trump would still have a narrow window to work with because he is not proceeding with BORTAC outside of the federal complex in Portland.
That's right.
Right. And then now the other thing that people are forgetting too, because they keep asking, why is DHS in Portland? People seem to forget that Portland has an international seaport right on the Columbia River, which is federal jurisdiction, which DHS and Border Patrol inspect these cargo ships as they come into the Columbia River.
Right.
So yes, they are there. They have jurisdiction, right? Just right there alone, they have federal jurisdiction.
They're already present. They're already present in the area.
So I mean, I think a lot of folks have, let's say, really confused this situation as in being overreach, as in being fascist, as they say. They like to throw around fascist.
Fascism is a meaningless term anymore, right? Yeah. Nazi, fascist. People throw it around. They have absolutely no idea what it means beyond cosmetics. I mean, and that's why they're attacking the cosmetics of the situation, right? Because they don't. First of all, many of them lack any sort of intellectual underpinning or scholarly underpinning to be able to discuss this on principled or statutory grounds, right? So they just go after the optics. That's all they understand. Oh, scary looking guys in uniforms, and that's about the level of understanding and the level of analysis they're at. And so scary looking guys in uniforms, what is that? That's fascism.
Yeah.
Scary looking guys in uniforms is fascism, right? And that's about as complex as they understand the situation, unfortunately. And that's what the left has turned these phrases into. Unfortunately, I see a lot of the people on the right, as well. They'll call communists Nazis, or whatever. These terms have almost been rendered meaningless for everybody on all sides. And I think that's why you see the attacks on what Trump's doing here as fascist or stormtroopers, because they don't really have any statutory grounds to stand on. So they have to attack the optics of it, right? It's the internet equivalent of calling somebody a name, right? to discredit their argument. We're just going to call, oh, you're ugly, so shut up, or will you voted for Trump, so you're a racist, calling people names. It's one of the, it's a debate fallacy. It means you don't have any intellectual firepower to back up your argument. So you just resort to name calling, right? So that's what this is. This is the internet equivalent of name calling. They're wearing camo uniforms. That's one of the top objections that I've seen. And I've even seen people on the right on Twitter, on my Twitter and on regular Twitter, outside of my own account, complaining that, well, why are they wearing these camo uniforms? I'm like, really? That's the issue here. They're wearing camo uniforms.
And what, you want to wear all white? I mean, we could do that too. All black, green, like it don't matter.
Yeah.
The correct stuff is on. It don't matter what color. So
these are people that don't have arguments. They don't understand. They don't understand facts, logic, statute, the Constitution. It's all optics. It's a shouting war. It's a shouting match, and that's what most of Twitter is anyway. It's just a shouting match, right? But but that's what the mainstream media does too. It just shouts, and so you'll have the paid liars in the mainstream media just whipping the people into a frenzy. I saw a picture online today of, it had one of these guys that was like in a scary pose because it looked like he was kicking something, like a tear gas canister or something. And probably a protester had thrown it back, their own canister back or something. I can't remember exactly, but it had him in this wild and crazy pose, and it was an article attacking the Trump's use of these troops. It wasn't one of those pictures of them standing nicely in a row, peacefully watching everybody. It was probably the one action photo they could find of anything, and of course that's the one they used. So they're stirring the pot. They're trying to, they speak to their low information voters, the low information crowd that sees a guy in camouflage and goggles, and all you guys do is say, hey, it's fascists, it's stormtroopers, and these people react and they think Donald Trump's the worst guy in the world. And that's really the level of that's what's going on in their head. There's nothing beyond that going on in their head. That's it.
Right. And here's the thing, right? And I bring up the same argument when Obama did the same thing in Baltimore City. And a lot of folks on the right were like, kind of the same argument, but opposite, right? And I'm sitting here and my same stance with Obama when he did what he did in Baltimore during the Freddie Gray riots. So I had the same argument. My stance has not moved from that. He had every right to do that. It was getting unruly and out of order. He ordered the federal troops in to protect the federal buildings, and people got in the way. They got picked up.
Yeah.
It's plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right. People, the thing that I get really tired of is the Constitution is only right if it supports your guy or you support your guy. And the Constitution does not work like that.
Yeah.
right? What's good for the goose is good for the gander too in
Right.
this situation. You know, it's like you can't be objective when it comes to the supreme law of the land. It either it is or it isn't.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
I think you bring up a good point. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
Well, I was going to say that I think number one, you're absolutely correct. You know, when it's our guy or my guy, you know, he can do no wrong. And people often don't like you going after their sacred cows. Like I'll criticize Trump online, and some people will get mad at me for criticizing Trump. But I happen to believe that no politician is above reproach, is above criticism, is above my, you know. They should all be held accountable. Every politician, no matter who he is, she is, no matter what party, no matter how much you like them, they should be held accountable because they have power, and they should always be held accountable. All that being said, I think one of the things that people don't like is when the politicians who aren't one of their guys selectively follows or selectively applies the Constitution, right? They don't, and that's irksome, right? I like Obama, violate the Constitution all day long, every day. Sometimes does the right thing, right? And so, but does it in such a way that and that not the Baltimore City thing, certainly, because he was protecting federal property, but other things, right? So the selective enforcement of the Constitution also frustrates people. Right, where this guy doesn't believe in the Constitution, he regularly breaks it or doesn't follow it, but every now and then he will follow it just to stick it to people, right? And so, you can't criticize him on the grounds of following the Constitution. It's like it's the hypocrisy of it, right? That and the inconsistency that gets under people's skin. And I can empathize with that. I mean, I would like politicians to always follow the Constitution, but when they selectively follow it just to stick it to people, that's what really irks people. Right.
That's exactly it. I mean,
and maybe that's what's happening here a little bit with the Trump thing. People think that Trump doesn't follow the Constitution, that he's constantly breaking the Constitution. And but now he's using federal law enforcement to stop our peaceful protests, you know. and maybe there's an element of that here. I didn't consider that till now, but maybe there's an element of that here, you know, where people think he's this tyrant that doesn't care about the Constitution. Oh, but now he does. And they think he's a hypocrite or something, you know.
I really don't get it. And you know, we'll always stand on what that piece of paper says, no matter who the politician is. You know, you're going to get ran through the ringer.
I just wish don't trample on it, right? Stand on it, don't trample on it.
But see, here's the thing: we have to get people to understand that they can't give away their 10th Amendment rights, which is the reserved powers of the states.
Yeah.
People have to be vigilant and not giving those things away. I mean, right now they're trying to convince people to give away their right to the way they vote to the federal government right now. Well, you're just going to just toss that up, you know, the whole electoral college thing. You want to toss that up and hand that to the federal government? Like, it's too much.
Yeah.
But people want to do it for the greater good, and the greater good, as we've seen with the greater good with the government, makes it all not good.
Yeah, it's whoever, I think, and to that point, the greater good isn't decided by the people. It's decided by a few people in government, like a few bureaucrats here or there, a couple an elected politician or two, and a couple of their cronies in the right spot can hold millions of people hostage, right? And so again, it comes back to what you were talking about, my guy, their guy. If it's my guy, I don't care, right? I don't care if this guy's, you know, trampling on rights and centralizing and concentrating power and abusing things, because it's my guy. He's doing what I like, right?
Right.
And I see a lot of people on the right saying that we gotta turn into Nazis. We gotta embrace full state fascism because it's the only answer for the leftists taking over the country. I think that's wrong. But totally but this is not an effect that is that's isolated to one side or the other. It's like you said, my guy's fine, everybody else sucks, right? And that's that's not an intellectually consistent or coherent position.
No, it's not at all, because they have an R or whatever letter next to their name. You know what I mean? So the last question is going to be, well, next to last two questions. What the people of Portland, the do good citizen, pays their taxes, all that stuff that are going to end up being affected by tax increases. I mean, we've already seen it in Minneapolis. They just had a tax hike on the property owners to pay for damage. So,
and who had to clean? Not only did they have to pay for it, who had to clean it up?
Yeah,
the good people, the volunteers and other people had to go clean it up. Look at Chaz in Seattle, who had to clean that up. Why didn't they arrest or fence in all those people in Chaz and make them clean it up? They didn't.
Right.
They just drove them out, and now and now taxpayers are having to pay staff and cops and to clean it all up, right?
They're not paying cops up there, bro.
Not cops, but they're defunding it. What I mean is city officials are the ones that are having to clean up the mess. And I also mean symbolically, not literally. Cops are having to come in and clean up messes now. Look at their precinct. Who's cleaning that up?
They just set that on fire the other day. Yeah. They just put the flame on it. I'm just
I noticed that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is now on manhunts for people who set fire to and damaged federal properties in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
and I see local law enforcement now, in Salt Lake's doing this, and in other places they're posting pictures and say, "Hey, please help us find these people." And I'm like, why didn't you just protect these? Why didn't you do your job in the first place? It's called, there's an old thing that I learned, old saying I learned when I was, 4, 5, 6 years old. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Everybody knows that, right? Sure. But instead they got paid to stand around and do nothing, right? And now they're going to get paid again to go try and catch these people and fix things. So I'm like, no, just do your job. Just do your job in the first place. We don't have to worry about this. It's so much harder to have to fix things after the fact. You can't fix them sometimes, and you can't catch people sometimes. But you know what? You can prevent it. You can prevent it. Yeah. And that's what Trump's doing here in Portland, right? Now he's taking a stand in the most militant area there is. What are they, like 55 days of riots and fires in a row now?
Yeah, it's like 58. 58 days. Yeah.
So he's finally doing something, and he's picked the hottest zone to do it in. And he's well within his rights. And unfortunately, we saw in Minneapolis and Minnesota, they want federal taxes now and emergency relief funds to pay for. I'm like, no. We have too much of this in this country where nobody takes responsibility for their actions. There's no responsibility or accountability unless you're a law-abiding citizen. Then there's consequences, like the McCloskeys in St. Louis.
Yes,
who defended their property and defended themselves against threats against their life, and were subsequently arrested, and their weapons were seized. And I see now that the state has dropped the charges or erased those charges, but they still have an out of control DA in St. Louis who's going to continue, exercising tyranny. And we see this in other places where people can, paint the roads illegally, or paint buildings, throw paint on buildings or burn down buildings or whatever.
But you can't come back and you can't deface it, right?
Yeah, you can't come back and paint over it though, right? We saw that what was her name?
Sister Beatty. Sister Beatty.
Who the cops stood around and watched everybody burn down buildings and commit crimes and shoot people, and they stood down. But did you see how they had a fence around the Black Lives Matter and how many cops they had protecting that mural? And when she came in there and poured paint on there, they arrested her.
Yeah, but what's funny though, right? Right? They really didn't arrest her, right? right? They just let her do her thing with the black.
Kind of were trying to,
they was making it look like that. We're gonna try to arrest her. Okay, she got over here. Okay,
yeah.
Oh, let's get her again. It's quite hilarious. But I think the way some of the officers' faces were when she was saying refund the police.
Mhm.
You know, they were like, okay, all right, she's on our team. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll let her keep playing in the black paint a little bit. You know, so, but you know, it's
But in California, somebody painted over Black Lives Matter, and now they got arrested. You know,
yep.
and in other places, conservatives and people on the right can't protest and deface property or defaced property, whatever that is. But if you're a lawbreaker leftist, you can do whatever you want. You have carte blanche. You have license right now. And that's another reason why they hate Trump and hate what he's doing of protecting this federal property in Portland, because they're not being allowed to operate with impunity. You know, and these are sinister forces. We shouldn't just dismiss this as babies throwing temper tantrums, because these things are 58 days in a row of rioting in Portland. Nobody, let me tell you something, Ron. Let me tell you something. You love the Constitution. All right. You love it. You burn with passion for the Constitution. I know that. We know each other personally. We've, you know, face to face, we've hung out, we've done things, we've campaigned together. You don't have the energy to demonstrate 58 days in a row publicly for anything. All right. Nobody does. Nobody's got the emotional energy, psychological energy, and bandwidth for organized protests and rioting 58 days in a row. Nobody does. This is paid. This is supported. There's massive infrastructure and capital behind this. That's what's keeping it alive. That's what's keeping it going. That's the gasoline and it's running on, and the air that's feeding the fire, right? It's fake. It's fake. And we have to stand up to these bullies and the forces that are behind this. Now, where's Trump on that? Where's the Department of Justice on that? Who's looking into the money? Who's looking into the organizing behind this stuff? You know, are there RICO cases, RICO implications here? You know, money laundering, racketeering. And what's going on here? Why isn't anybody looking into it or trying to get to the bottom of this? Maybe there is. I haven't heard anything about it. But you know, this is going on all around the country, seemingly under Democrat leadership in most places is where it's being most permitted. So, you know, if my criticism on Trump is not that he's, you know, not that he's got these troops out and that that's the bad optics. I'm like, who's looking into the organizations backing this? We know that the communists, the Chinese, the Chi-Coms, and both the Soviets were heavily involved in creating, you know, civil rights unrest in the past.
Right.
And we saw what China's been doing with you know, this coronavirus and with the Uyghurs. They're involved in all TikTok, you know, this TikTok PSYOP platform. They're involved in all sorts of shady stuff. Where's the money coming from for all these things? Who's behind it? We know some of these answers, but not because of the federal government and not because of federal investigations, because citizen journalism and because of other independent journalists like James O'Keefe or InfoWars or whoever, right?
Right.
You know, so why isn't Trump doing more? That's where my criticism is. Why isn't he doing more to dismantle the power networks, to expose the frauds, to shine light on the foreign money and foreign power? It's like it's a big black void. There's nothing. It's silence. There doesn't seem to be any movement on this front.
But you know, it happens that something's going to fill that vacuum. Actually, something has already filled that vacuum, right? And again, going back to your carte blanche comment, right? That's what it is. These leftists, these I don't even want to call them leftists. I'm gonna call them anarchist or anti-capitalist, anti-government types, right? Violent anti-government types that are filling this void and making everybody in America think that this is the way it should be. This is the legitimate way it should be in America. Right, and completely just subvert everything we have learned for this chaos. Stalin did the same thing, created all this chaos, and then he took power of the Communist Party in Russia, and then guess what he did after that? He went after Trotsky and killed him.
Yeah,
and then the whole slate. And everybody
we know what happens. We know what happens to the useful idiots, right? And you know.
Oh,
once they've served their purpose, right?
Yep, sure enough. So now we have before we close out, we have Trump now threatening to send troops to Milwaukee and Chicago, and I can't remember what the other city. I think Dallas. He said.
Okay.
I think he said Dallas. He's going to send them to. I can't remember right now. If he's going to not send but activate, because there's already BORTAC units in these cities already that people obviously don't pay attention to, or they would have already known this. So I wonder if he's going to take the same stance as he did in Portland, or will he be a little bit more aggressive?
That's interesting. He obviously picked Portland because it was the most, it was the hottest zone, if you will, right? And it's a good test case. If he can get away with what he did in Portland, which he should have been able to, right? When I say get away with, I'm not trying to insinuate that that he was trying to break any laws or trample on the Constitution. If he's able to, to do that with success, then that's a good pilot case, right? And so I wouldn't be looking for him yet to. I wouldn't be looking for him yet to go past what he's established in Portland. If anything, I look to see him replicate what he did in Portland, which is peaceful protection of properties, and that might be enough. I think you do that. I think you would be smart to do that, and then and continue deploying that and replicating that model, taking the lessons learned, right, in Portland and some of these other hot places, and replicate that. And maybe that will be enough, right? And you don't have to do any more. You don't have to do any escalation. Maybe that's enough. And so I think that's a prudent move if indeed that's what he's doing. And I think that's what he's probably doing. And that's what I would guess. That's what I would. I think that's what the smart money would do here. And so I applaud him for that. And so let's wait and see what happens. And maybe it might end up being enough. On the other hand, it might not be, and he might have to escalate somewhere. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your statement on that. I just hope that the local law enforcement actually does not try to be bullies and try to either distract or obfuscate the federal authorities when doing this.
What happened in Oregon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The state attorney general has launched a lawsuit, and I think Ted Wheeler now has. What did they do in Portland? They are instructing their local law enforcement to not cooperate with federal authorities.
Right. And see, here's the thing, right? You reminded me something mentioning that the Portland PD and the Portland Police Union gave the federal government intel, especially in the one video that I have, to arrest these people. They had the intel to go just pick these people up. And now Portland Police, as you said, is being instructed not to do something. And I've been noticing the police union's Twitter and people, they're saying things are happening in Portland Police. Like, we're not even out there. We went home for the night. We somewhere else.
Not surprising, Portland PD that they're not doing that. They're in for the night, right?
Right. And the thing with that, what Portland PD too, though, is that the mayor himself is double dipping, right?
Yeah.
He's the commissioner and the mayor. Come on, man. I mean, we had that same situation here with the sheriff before Rosie Rivera. What was his name? He's down in Juwab County now.
Yeah.
That he was double dipping, right? He was double dipping, and kind of the same. But he got ran off, obviously. But you can't have the executive and have the same person running the police department.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for about 1,000 reasons, right? And if somebody can't understand that, then listing them off is hardly going to help. But yeah, Ted Wheeler, we know, is a special piece of work. He's been aiding and abetting Antifa and violent BLM for years now. Right? And he's been doing everything he can to enable it, to diminish federal presence, to create chaos. You know what? They get what they vote for. They've gotten what they vote for. And if the citizens of Portland haven't figured out who he is by now, I guess they never will. Or this is what they want, right?
I'm wondering though, right? why DOJ hasn't designated designated him earlier as a terrorist organization. I mean, if you remember how that one old Antifa guy tried to blow up the freaking penitentiary right down there, but the ICE facility right there, right there. That should have been like red flag number one. Like, nope, we're done with you.
Yeah.
Right. But
that's what happens when you get your people, when the wrong people are in the positions of power, when the wrong people have their hands on the lever of power, right? Is that it doesn't take too many people to subvert law and order and to do what makes sense. Why hasn't anybody been prosecuted for the attempted coup against Donald Trump?
Right. Yeah, they keep saying the Durham report's coming. The Durham report is coming. I'm still waiting.
Hey, but the DOJ, they got Aunt Becky good, didn't they? They got Aunt Becky, Lori Loughlin. They caught her. They caught her paying a lot of money to get her kid into a private school.
Yeah,
good job, guys. We got, I'm pretty sure we got some fish fried. But that's like their signature achievement of the last 2 years is they caught Aunt Becky. That's
yeah. It's something's got to change somewhere, man. I mean, we can't be, again, just like we said, you can't be selective with the Constitution. We can't be selective with law and order.
Yeah.
Because, again, it'd be very easy to subvert.
Yeah.
And we have seen it throughout time. We have seen this solely throughout time.
And we're watching it live and in living color right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just... personally, I think my opinion is going to come to a point where the good citizens of Portland are going to be like, you know what? We're done. And you're going to get the 3%ers out there. You're going to get, just regular Joe Schmo.
Wabe flags, right?
Oh, yeah. They're going to go out and be like, you know what, Ted Wheeler, we're done with you. We're going to run you out of town.
Honestly,
you're done.
As much as we hate that, the idea of that's kind of the reality, even in early America. Officials got tarred and feathered. They got ran out of town when they were corrupt. They got a brick through the window, strategically. Now, this is going to, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, well, what about the KKK burning crosses on lawns? Yeah, okay. It's been abused. But at some level, our elected politicians have forgotten who they serve, right? And they've been allowed to have a second tier of justice. Some people call it two-tier justice. I call it two-tiered no justice, right? There's no justice on the top tier. It's still just a single tier of justice because there's only one of the tiers that gets justice. And so at some point, somebody needs to be made an example of in some way. I don't know how. I'm not advocating anything specific against any specific person, but maybe it's just inevitable that somebody's going to be made an example of, and that's going to make all the rest of these little petty tyrants think twice about their little petty tyranny, right? And maybe for the health, maybe the Tree of Liberty needs that. Maybe the tree of Liberty needs a little blood, metaphorical blood, right? And maybe that'll go a long way. A brick through a window, a mayor getting run out of town. We have the mechanisms in place to take care of ourselves peacefully through voting, through campaigns, through citizen activism, through forming up in groups and getting things done. We have the mechanisms in place for peaceful resolutions. But when a bully continues throwing punches, eventually somebody punches back and doesn't use their words, right?
And you know what? We have to go back, as talked about at the top of the hour, right? Article 4, Section 4. All states are promised a Republican form of government.
A Republican form of government.
And if you acting like a tyrant,
that ain't Republican.
You can be removed immediately, if not sooner.
This is something I've been talking about for a couple of years now, that states are guaranteed a Republican form of government. And look at California, where one man, Gavin Newsom, rules with an absolute iron fist over 40 million people. 40 million people. And one guy gets to decide if they're all going to wear masks or not wear masks, or one guy decides if they're going to go to the beach or not go to the beach.
Right.
Where they've invested the lawmaking authority into the executive. That's tyranny. Under the all classical American definitions of tyranny, Gavin Newsom is a tyrant because he's consolidated lawmaking with law enforcement, right? Into one office. That is tyranny. And we're seeing that all over the country in mayors and governors who are taking it upon themselves. And they're calling it things like emergency powers or whatever. But really what they're doing is they're consolidating lawmaking and law enforcement into one man. And this is a dangerous precedent. It's a very dangerous precedent. And,
yes, it is.
And it will be interesting to see if eventually somebody or anybody ever takes up a case on that basis. We're guaranteed a Republican form of government, and having 120 state representatives or 80 state senators for 40 million people. Is that like in California? Is that a Republican form of government? Or in Portland, where Ted Wheeler lets terrorists run amok for 58 straight days? Is that a Republican form of government? It'll be interesting to see if anybody ever tries to bring suit or to litigate this through the courts. Now, I'm not a constitutional precedent expert, like a Supreme Court precedent expert. Perhaps this has been litigated in the past. I'm not aware of something, but maybe.
But I haven't read anything as far as the 10th Amendment's concerned. As far as that part is concerned, I haven't read anything that would pertain to that. So who knows? I could have missed something. It's possible, but you know how that goes. So
yeah. Stay frosty out there, my friends. This is what I tell people. I've been telling people this for years. They're like, Sam, what are we going to do? And I'm like, guns, ammo, food, and water. And gold, I guess. Gold, guns, food, and ammo. And then on top of that, Convention of States. This is where I'm going to give my Convention of States plug. There is a potential peaceful resolution to some of this, and that is through Convention of States, where we can take power back from the federal government and restore it. Now, this is going to sound weird because I've done criticizing local government, state government, but we can take power away from the federal government and restore it back to the states and localities, which on the whole is a good thing. It gets abused sometimes, but at the same time, we have more recourse as citizens when it's abused at a state and local level. We have virtually no recourse when it gets abused at the federal level, right? No recourse at all. It's too far away. It's too distant. We can't reach it. But through organizing through the Convention of States, we can begin the process of taking our power and our rights back, bringing them back to the local level where we can protect them better. So go to conventionofstates.com, my friends.
Yes, conventionofstates.com. Yes. And if you have any questions about it, you can find me or Sam on Twitter. We can definitely give you the rundown on that because, the situations like Portland, situations like Chicago, and all your bigger cities, these situations are caused, one, because the federal government is too far away, right? In these situations, they're too far away to put pressure on the state government to do something. Even the states are detached, right? With the 17th Amendment, right? The state is even detached from the federal government, right?
So I call it seceded. The federal government seceded from the states.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. We're not the United States. We're just the states of America, literally. You know what I mean? At this point, that has little pinpoints that connect the states together for whatever quid pro quo the federal government wants to do on a yearly basis with the states. But it's very important that we do take our country back and we do restore the power back to the people as it was intended. That way we can hold the federal government accountable. Now, People are going to say, that we hold them accountable by voting them out. But people got to remember the concept of bicameralism, and the purpose of bicameralism, right? Was the states had their house and the people had their house.
That's right.
And that's how it's supposed to be. Now, how do you hold the Senate accountable? You hold your state legislature accountable. If the 17th Amendment was not in place, you hold your state legislature. So that the governor, lieutenant governor, and all your state legislators selected your senator. And if you didn't like who they picked for senator, you could put pressure on them to directly rescind them and send someone else in their place.
That's right.
Now, both houses are the people's house.
Yeah.
How does
who controls this idea of we hold them accountable through voting? Show me how the federal government has ever been accountable through voting, been held accountable through voting. Little things here and there, I suppose, but mass democracy is controlled by whoever has the most money to spend.
Mm-hmm.
And 90% of campaigns, or over 90% of campaigns, are won by whoever spends the most money. So if you have the most money, you win. So if you're a gazillionaire or a powerful, foreign interest or special interest, or lobbyist or whatever, you just fund the campaigns you want and you win. And then you get the policies you want. And that's what we're seeing right now unfolding across the country with all of these local DAs who were funded by George Soros. You can go get on the internet and look up DAs funded by George Soros. There's many of them. He decided to spend millions and millions of dollars on local races, on DAs. And now we're seeing a lot of these same DAs who are not enforcing the law, who are arresting law-abiding citizens like the McCloskeys, and so I think we begin to see how one person or a small group of people with lots of money can buy the government and the policies they want, and how that can shift the ground right under our feet in America. And so voting to hold people accountable, it's fake. It's a fake idea
right now it is.
It's a fake idea.
Yes, it is.
Convention of States is the answer, my friends, or violence. That's it.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. And if like I said, Convention of States, like Sam said, conventionofstates.com. Make sure you check that out. Again, if you got questions about Convention of States or how Article 5 of the Constitution works, either one of us will definitely answer your questions on that. But also check and see if your state has passed a resolution for a Convention of States. That's even more important. And if they haven't, again, go to conventionofstates.com, and again, me and Sam can help you through that. The link up with your state directors, your state director, whatever state you live in, and get you on board there and get you involved in trying to push that petition, because we need 34 states. Right. We need 34 states to call a Convention of States, and we only need 38 to ratify. But we need to get to 34 first before we worry about the 38. Yeah. Right. So, and I think where are we at now, Sam? Like 19?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
19, 20?
19.
Yeah. So we're a little over halfway there. So again, check and see if your state has passed a resolution as such. And, because only way we're going to take back this country is if we take the power away from the federal government.
Yeah. There's many battlegrounds, right? There's many battlegrounds of liberty. There's the federal battleground of liberty. There's the state battleground of liberty. There's the local battleground. There's the PTA battleground of liberty, right?
Yep, exactly.
And we can't ignore any of them, but first things first. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen, and the federal government's too big and we're too small. And we need to take power back from them so we can get bigger and stronger. And then we can do things. We can do things at the local level of the battleground as well, too.
Exactly. So, Sam, I appreciate you, brother, for taking time out this hot afternoon.
Thanks for having me on, Rob.
Lake Valley. We're down here roasting marshmallows outside with no fire, for real. I'm serious. I think it's like 103 out there right now. I'm serious.
It's a hot one. I'll tell you what. It's a little balmy for Arizona, where I used to live, but it's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good rager here for Utah today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You want to go ahead and let everybody know how to find you on the interwebs real quick?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Sam Parker Senate, Sam Parker Senate on Twitter. And you'll find my link to Parler on there as well. And if you're really enterprising, you can find my Sam Parker Senate site on Facebook as well. And I'm on Instagram at Sam Parker US Senate on Instagram.
No doubt about it. Y'all know how to find me. Again, y'all, thank you, Sam, for the wonderful commentary as usual, and our constitutional minds put together to try to reunite America, make America the United States of America again, instead of the states of America again. And so until next time, everybody, be easy, stay blessed, stay cool, and remember, uphold the Constitution, no matter who has what power or letter next to their name. That's the only other way we will save this country. Until next time, y'all.